Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Pittsburgh Pirates. We are at the beginning of free agency for the 2039 to 2040 offseason. And the Pirates are coming off of a shockingly good 94 and 68 season, even though we did get swept by the Diamondbacks in the AL or the NLDS. And I don't think it's going to be a real busy offseason for these Pirates. One, because we don't have tons of money to spend. You can see we've got about $16 million available for free agents right now, but that's driven by cutting our scouting and development budgets back, both pretty materially, about 25% each from where they were a year ago. And we'd prefer to come out of the offseason with some money to maybe not, almost certainly not, get those budgets back to where they were a year ago, but still have them be on the high side relative to the rest of Major League Baseball. And the other reason I don't think it's going to be a hugely active offseason for us is that I don't think we have a lot to change. Our pitching staff was excellent last year, and we're bringing back all 5 of our starters, who you can see put up a lot of innings for us. And right now we're bringing back most of our relievers, with 5 relievers likely to be on the team. And we do have some help down on the farm, most notably among the pitchers, Luis Molina, who unfortunately has been out since early July with shoulder inflammation, ended his first season in AAA. But he was brilliant in AAA with 11-2 record and 1.91 ERA. We were actually considering bringing him up right when he got hurt, and he was certainly going to be a September call-up for us. So he's going to be turning 25 at the start of next season, so it's time to see what he can do at the major league level. He may not be up on opening day, but he will certainly be an addition to our bullpen and possibly at some point our starting rotation next year. He'll certainly be our 6th starter in spring training when we typically go with a 6-man rotation. But not really much for us to change with the pitching staff, because the pitching staff that we're largely bringing back was tops in the National League in runs allowed last year. So if it ain't broke, we don't need to fix it. On the offensive side, we also don't have a ton to do through the arbitration process. We're bringing back a very similar team to last year. We did end up bringing back Adam Fuchs and Jim Kager, who were 2 guys we're not totally sure of. We traded away first baseman Pat Peaches for Danny Mendez, who's less expensive, better defensively, also a good personality, and about a year younger. So we think that that's a little bit of addition. Where we've taken the big hit is our outfield. So the plan is to bring on 1 and possibly 2 outfielders. And then we've also got some infield depth down in the minor leagues that I think should help us. So I think it's just a matter of bringing on a couple of outfielders. And the reason I say 2 outfielders, even though right now we have Mendez, NL Rookie of the Year, and MVP Isaiah Hill, Jordan Owens, and Chris Gomez signed, is that I am going to take the advice that frequent commenter Matt Jones provided a few episodes back when he suggested, given the pitching staff that we have, where basically everyone, including our relievers, has starter quality stamina, not necessarily a starter's arsenal of pitches, but starter quality stamina. Should we think about trying to go with 12 pitchers and 14 position players, given that if people remain healthy, you can see by the number of innings we pitched with our starters, we're not taxing the bullpen all that much, and I think I want to try to do that. So thanks, Matt, for the suggestion. I think right now, as the 2039 offseason begins, we do plan on setting this team up a little differently than we traditionally do, with Traditionally, we go 13 pitchers, 13 position players, and we are going to try 12 pitchers and 14 position players next year. So the result of that means I'm going to probably look to add 2 bats, and with only incoming rookie Andres Mendez and shortstop Tony Fonseca as left-handed bats on the team right now, certainly I'm going to be looking to have at least one of the additions be a lefty hitter, and possibly both of them fit that description. And looking at the potential outfielders who are going to be available, and as you can see, we've made lots of offers of minor league contracts to people as we try to kind of continue strengthening and revamping our farm system and getting better players and good personalities in there. But the top end of the outfielders who are available, some good players, certainly with some really nice power, but way out of our price range. So we're going to have to be dipping into the lower quality free agents for the potential people to add. A few of them that I've highlighted that I'll talk about. I know a frequent commenter, 3/4 Badger, is not going to like me to talk about Victor Avelar, because he's been suggesting that I move on from this guy for the better part of a decade at this point between Kansas City and Pittsburgh, but he is not looking for crazy money anymore. And he's still got that pop in his bat. He absolutely was a disaster last year after we traded for him near the trade deadline. But you can see that he did hit 30 home runs in his previous 2 full seasons, one in Kansas City and one in Pittsburgh, with batting averages of over 250 and WRC pluses and OPS pluses in the 120 plus area. He's not great defensively, and I think a big part of our success of our pitching staff last year was improving our team defense significantly, so that works against him. But if we can sign Avelar to a reasonable contract for a year, which I don't even know is a possibility. I'm guessing he's going to be looking for more than that. Actually, he is looking for a 1-year deal, so that could help us, because the other thing that you may not have noticed, but you probably did, is that we don't have a lot of money for extensions. So we're looking for a couple guys to help us, but we're looking for a couple guys to help us on 1-year contracts, most likely, unless we make some other significant moves. So Avelar, bringing him back, is in the mix. Also bringing back center fielder Ignacio Carbajal is in the mix. This is a guy who's won a lot of Gold Gloves, going to turn 30 in May, but he's durable, not looking for crazy money, and he's been a not horrible major league hitter. I mean, he's coming off of a really good season for us with a 96 OPS plus and a 92 WRC plus. He's very good defensively. He's got some speed, and he also bats left-handed. I'm guessing he's going to be looking for more than a 1-year deal. No, he's looking for a 1-year deal. I would tend to think that we're going to try to bring Carbajal back for the defense, for the left-handed bat. And also because if we don't bring him back, our center fielder is Jordan Owens, who just has not been a very good major league hitter. And I mean, granted, he's coming off of his worst season ever with a 55 OPS plus, 55 WRC plus, batting a .178. He has been better before we brought on Carbajal last year when he was an everyday center fielder. But I wouldn't mind having both of them on the team next year, because Owens is also pretty solid defensively. Would be a nice defensive substitute for us, especially if we do bring on a second outfielder who looks more like Avelar without quite as good a glove. So if Carbajal is a reasonable price, could definitely bring him back. And then Chris Carrillo is a new player, a guy that we don't have any previous relationship with. Profiles as, a very average-ish major league hitter. He had a huge year in the Korean Baseball League last year, leading the league in runs, homers, ribbies, slugging percentage, and OPS. But over the course of his major league career, he's been an above average hitter, even though his profile suggests that he's very average. Has decent speed, is a good base runner, is a competent defensive left fielder, competent in right. You could play him in center, but you don't feel great about it. He is another left-handed bat, though. I'm guessing at 27 years old, though, he's probably looking for more than a one-year deal. Yeah, he's looking for a 3-year deal, so that could be a little tricky. But when I've gone through the list and kind of looked at the players who are potentially a little less expensive, Avear, Carbajal, and Carrillo are the ones who really stood out to me. So I'm thinking our strategy may be to try to bring on one at least, if not more of them. Maybe bring on one of them right now and see if some of the others kind of linger for a little long before they get signed. Maybe they're not getting the interest that they hoped, and we can get them for a little less money, or in the case of Carrillo or Carrillo, depending on how I want to pronounce it, maybe get him for less years than he's looking for right now. But those are kind of the targets. Like I said, I don't think it's going to be a very busy offseason for this team. And the first thing we're going to try to do is to try to get Carbajal back to play center field for us again. Looking for a one-year deal at $3.8 million. I prefer not to offer him that much. We'll see what he thinks about $3.2 million. He's willing to think about it, probably because it's the first day of the off season, the first day of free agency, and he's expecting a bidding war for his services to materialize. But we'll get that offer out to Carbajal. For the time being, I think I want to wait and think a little bit about Avear or Carrillo. There's also potential that we could get someone who would fit the bill for us in a trade. In a perfect world, I wouldn't mind opening up a little bit of salary to sign people to longer contracts. We will have money next year because we're not going to bring Tony Fonseca back on that $10.5 million team option. Pretty unlikely we're going to bring Adam Fuchs back at close to $9 million. Although it hurts me to say it, pretty unlikely we're going to bring young closer Ernesto Moreno back at about $9 million. So we will have money to spend next offseason as we move on from some players who are getting a little more expensive. But that's not, just knowing that I'm going to do that today, unfortunately, with the way the game mechanics work, isn't going to allow me to be signing people to long-term extensions. So we've simmed ahead a week and a half or so, I think, and finally heard from Ignacio Carbajal. Likes our offer so far. Presumably that's because we're the only team that's interested in him. We've signed some minor league free agents. We've also been rejected by some minor league free agents. And importantly, we just are about to hear now from the two international minor league free agents that really intrigued us towards the end of our past episode. Shortstop Victor Serrano, who we are proposing a minor league contract that will become a $1.2 million major league contract if he makes the big club. Thinking about it, offered a similar contract to Jose Negrete, and he's also thinking about it. So we'll see what those guys come back with. Winter meetings about to begin. Maybe by the time we get through the winter meetings, we'll hear back from Carbajal on what he's really thinking. And the draft lottery, not a factor for us this year. Looks like the A's will be picking number 1. And the Brewers dropped all the way to 6, which I think is as far as the worst team in baseball can possibly drop. And we did get Negrete signed to the minor league deal. I think this is a really interesting prospect for us to bring on. He's only 22 years old. We're not going to put him in the majors right away. if he really develops fantastically as a player who could help us in the not so distant future. It absolutely looks like it with his really good outfield range, really nice arm. He's got some speed, good work ethic. His bat is not going to be fantastic, but with that gap power and the good speed and acceptable base running, I guess it's really more the speed and the gap power that are going to factor in. But although he's not going to be a huge high average hitter or a huge home run hitter, should hit a decent number of doubles and triples. So definitely not the kind of prospect that I mind just kind of falling into our laps, given that we haven't given him a major league deal at this point. He can opt for free agency if we're not going to add him to the team, but with a player like this who really needs to be in the minors, I'd be a little surprised if he opts out. Just for the time being, we're going to put him on our Class A team. He's probably good enough that he could be above Class A, but I think that we may run him a week or two in Class A week or two in High A ball, then have him spend maybe a couple of months in Double A before maybe finishing off the season in Triple A if everything goes according to plan. But clearly, as we get a better scouting report on him and get to know him a little better, the pace of his move through the system could accelerate or decelerate. But glad to have him on board. Not the worst guy to just kind of drop in our laps, and certainly would feel the same way if we're able to get Serrano signed as well. And we have now officially lost Rodolfo Morales. Solid pitcher, traded for him from Milwaukee. Had a pretty good year for us, 3.47 ERA, 83 innings pitched. You can see he signed with the Dodgers for almost $10 million. Going to be making even more the next couple years. It's less than he was asking for when we were having conversations with him, but still more money than we could afford to spend on him, given our view that he's more of a reliever than a starter, given the depth of our starting rotation. That will not make Mr. Nutting happy because he wanted us to extend Morales, but to be fair, I don't think he really gave us the budget where we could have been spending about $10, $12 million a year on a reliever. So he's not going to be happy that we didn't sign him, but he's not going to be happy in a lot of things this offseason because we also haven't upgraded our third baseman. Maybe we'll make some progress on our on-base percentage. Maybe having the 14 position players rather than 12 will allow our manager to put some players into some pinch hit situations where we can generate a little more offense, even if the roster looks pretty similar to what it did last year. And since I know I don't plan on spending all of the money on free agents, I am just going to tweak our scouting and development budgets a little bit. I want them to be higher. I think it would help if I could speak and type at the same time. I want them to be higher than these amounts when we get out of spring training, or actually when we go into spring training and they're locked. But I just want to make sure that I'm at least moving them a little in the right direction in case for some reason I get caught up in recording these episodes and I don't think to go back and change it. I want to at least get them a little more towards the direction that I'd like them to be. You can see we've still got plenty of money to sign free agents, but very clearly we're going to be focused on people who are only looking for one-year deals. And another day, another reliever gone. Melvin Vasquez, who we picked up before the trade deadline last year, didn't pitch all that well for us, 31-year-old reliever. But fan interest almost crashed because we moved on from him. 3-point hit after the 1-point hit we took when we lost the other reliever. So not optimal, but hopefully we'll make some of it back up with better play on the field and potentially some of the people that we sign. Unfortunately, Victor Serrano is also looking like he's inclined to sign with Atlanta. Like his glove a lot, like his speed a lot. He's going to struggle to be a major league hitter, and he's also a couple years older than the outfielder that we signed, so he's not as great a prospect. Certainly the defense is awesome, but we do already have at AAA a couple of pretty awesome defensive players who don't really hit all that much. Oscar Gomez, you can see, is spectacular potentially defensively. Guy we traded for from the Cubs at the beginning of this year. Spent the whole year in AAA. Not a major league hitter, but with that glove, could we have him particularly on a 14-man everyday player roster? Could he be up on the team to use that glove? Certainly. And similarly with Luis Perez, another very nice glove, just not really a major league hitter. We picked him up in a trade with Atlanta before the deadline last year, also pretty young, but hit just 240 in AAA. But we do have two kind of players. What I'm saying is pretty similar to what I think Serrano could be in our farm system, to be honest, though. I mean, Serrano is a year and a half younger than both of those guys. And I think in a perfect world, he's probably a bit better hitter than those, given his batting profile and his speed. So would still definitely like to get him signed. We'll see what he's looking for at this point. This is kind of weird. He says that he'd rather play for us than Atlanta, but we've already made this offer to him. Maybe he just wants to hear it from us again. So we'll meet his demand. I think this is kind of telling us that he's not going to sign with us because, it's what we've already offered to him, and he's not going to accept it. Well, let's bump it up a little bit. Let's see what he thinks, because we're going to end up having him in the minors. If he wants to opt out, he can opt out. So it almost doesn't matter what we're going to offer him for a contract at the major league level. But let's see if we offer him $1.3 million. Yeah, he really wants a major league deal. Given that we've got the depth with those other players I just mentioned, as much as I like Serrano, well, we'll try him. We'll try him one more time. $1.5 million if we bring you up, buddy, because we're not going to bring you up. Ooh, he's willing to think about it. So we'll see. Maybe that'll let us get him into our system at least for spring training, and we can see exactly what we've got with him. In good news, we do have Ignacio Carbajal signed, so he should take right back over as our starting center fielder. Also give us another left-handed bat in the lineup, even if it's not an exceptional left-handed bat. So feel that that's probably going to be one of our two potential big moves for this offseason. I know in the context of all of baseball, it doesn't look like much of a needle mover, but I think in terms of what we want to do, getting Owens and his unimpressive bat kind of into a more of a utility role where we can still rely on his very good defensive ratings as a corner outfielder, or perhaps even a backup for Carbajal if we decide to pinch hit for Carbajal in a certain situation. Feel better with Owens in kind of that backup role. So good to have Carbajal on board. Take a quick look and just see if Avear and Carrillo are still around, since I haven't really checked in. Looking at the outfielders. And Avear still is available. Carrillo's gone, though. Wonder what kind of contract he got. He was the guy who was looking for multiple years, so was going to be tough for... Oh, it must be spelling his name wrong. Must be 2 R's. Dan... I can't remember who it was. Was it Jose? Who was it? It was Chris Carrillo, wasn't it? Wow, he went back to the Korean League. 2.3 million. And it was only a 1 year deal. He was definitely looking for over three, I think more than 3.5 million a year in a 3 year deal when I looked at him. Obviously, in retrospect, wish that we had thrown out a lower deal for him. But it is what it is. I don't think, whether or not we have him or on our team or not is going to be the ultimate determination of how successful the team is next year. And we've got the Rule 5 draft coming up in a couple of days. You can see we've only got 31 people on our 40-man roster right now. So probably will be some Rule 5 eligible guys that will want to move there. Looking at the overall ratings, a few older players who are not going to care so much about protecting, but definitely some young guys we need to think about. And then definitely some of our young players with potential. Luis Longoria is actually a pretty highly regarded prospect. He's had a lot of injury issues, so he's never made it above rookie ball, although I think this coming year he's certainly going to start moving up to A ball. But he's not ready for the majors, but unfortunately we can't take the risk of someone being willing to give him a major league position, major league spot and losing him. So we're going to put him on the secondary roster and then figure out if there's anyone else we need to. Sean Barley is a guy who I think we're also going to put on the roster to protect. He's closer to being ready to major leagues, only in high A ball, but he did hit 318, 26 doubles, 12 homers, 80 runs driven in last year. Not a great prospect, but still a guy who could be useful for this Pirates team down the line. So don't want to take the risk of losing him. And we'll take a look at the rest of these guys and see if there's anyone else that could be a candidate to get snagged from us in the Rule 5. And honestly, with Carrillo now off our opportunity set, it would be great if a decent outfielder happens to be available in the Rule 5. We'll cross our fingers that when we get to it in 4 days that there's some interesting outfielders out there for us to think about. And there's actually nobody else that we're going to put on the 40-man roster to protect from the Rule 5 draft. Hugo Painter is a 24-year-old, hasn't been above high A ball. He could be a major league reliever right now if he had to be, but he's nothing special. I'd prefer to not, put him onto a major league contract at this point. So we'll take the risk that someone will grab him for us, even though he's got the stamina to start with that brutal changeup as his third pitch. He's not really going to be a starter. Do like the personality, but just don't want to guarantee him a major league deal. Elijah Lawson, closer. Another guy who's never been above high A ball and is 24 years old. Again, if somebody wants to put him on a major league roster and keep him there all year, more power to you. Similar situation with Jordan Herrera. Especially with Herrera, actually 26 years old, going to be 27 soon. He's a AAA guy for us. The only way he'll be on our major league roster is if we have probably 4+ pitching injuries. So if someone wants to take any of these players from us and keep them on their major league roster all of next season, they're welcome to. And we are about to get the Rule 5 draft underway. A very different situation for the Pirates this year, picking 25th after the big regular season. We are going to get the draft started, and as I mentioned earlier, would be perfect if a good outfielder were to somehow be available in this draft and to fall to us. Before we even go through the players, we'll just see who our scout recommends. Oh, sorry, we haven't started the draft yet. Ooh, Al Alvarez. We've already lost a player. Not all that concerned about losing the 32-year-old second baseman. Spent last year down in AAA and only had 41 at-bats. So if he's going to make that big a difference for Seattle, good luck to you in the Pacific Northwest. So now back to what I was trying to do before we actually even look at the pool. Let's see what our scouting director recommends. Danny Brown, 24-year-old shortstop. Not a bad bat for kind of a utility infielder, but not much of a glove, not much speed. Never played above AA ball, and he hit just 224 there last year to 24-year-old. So don't think he's the kind of player that we want to guarantee a roster spot to. As I outlined a little earlier, we've got a couple great gloves in AAA. Pretty good chance that one of those guys will end up being kind of our sixth infielder and likely the 26th man on our team next year. So I don't love that recommendation. Always just kind of like to see who the highest potential guys available are. Billy Salinas, a 23-year-old right-handed reliever. Could be a decent pitcher. He's never been above A ball. I love, an extreme ground ball pitcher who throws in the high 90s. That's kind of cool. Like the work ethic. But given that we're going to be using 12 pitchers next year on the major league level most likely, and we've already got a pretty darn good pitching staff, I don't really see him being somebody that we need to chase after. And the pickings are unfortunately pretty slim in terms of the outfielders, at least when you're looking at the star ratings. Mark Antonio Narciso, 25-year-old center fielder. Love the glove, love the high work ethic, love the speed, love the fact that he can bunt. Problem is he's not a major league hitter. Did hit 286 in Oklahoma at the AAA level at the end of last season, but hit just 223 in AA Tulsa. As a fifth outfielder, he wouldn't be the worst guy in the world. Honestly, with the fact that we just signed Carbajal, and we also have Owens behind him, who is not quite as good defensively, but probably a little bit better of a hitter, I don't see Narciso being all that exciting of a guy for us to pursue. In my opinion, it's not the most impressive Rule 5 crop I've ever seen, or maybe that's just a sign that this Pirates roster has gotten a little better over the last couple years. I am going to pick up Bobby Barrera. So those of you who are getting sick of me going back to my old Royals will be disappointed. He was the second-round pick of the Royals back in 2033. Hit 286 last year in AAA and 326 in AA, but only 9 home runs combined across the two levels. So looks to be a guy who could hit for a decent average potentially, but not a ton of home run power. Not all that great defensively. I don't think he's going to make our 26-man roster, but we are looking for another outfielder. I don't think it can hurt us to have Barrera in camp and maybe at least have some options with him. As I said, I don't think he's going to make the roster, but if we have a bunch of injuries or if it turns out he's better than he looks to our scout right now, maybe there's a little something there. And there's just really not a lot there in this draft in my mind. Scouting director doesn't even recommend that we pick anyone in the second round. I tend to agree with him. We'll see if we lose any other players, but otherwise we are going to be done with the draft. Fair amount of players taken in the first round. Only player that we ended up losing was Al Alvarez, so we lost the 32-year-old second baseman, bringing on the 24-year-old left fielder. As I mentioned, Likely going to be sending him back to Kansas City, but at least we'll get a nice long look at him in camp. And in our quest to find some outfield help, just kind of looking who's on the trade block right now. Obviously not a ton of players out there, given that we're still relatively early in the off season and teams kind of probably like who they have at this point. Thought a little bit about Danny Sanchez. He's making stupid money, so we're going to have to get a team to retain a ton of the contract of just about anyone we would pick up. Rodolfo Herrera, similar situation, not making quite as much money. Like his glove a little bit, like his arm a lot, like the fact that he's got a little pop in his bat. We'd have to be able to really get him for nothing and have the Giants retain a huge amount of his contract for it to be of any interest at all to us. And they're willing to talk. Funny, they actually would trade him for Bobby Barrera, the youngster we just picked up from Kansas City in the Rule 5. So there's options to pick him up, but generally looks like they're looking for major leaguers or pretty good prospects. Just not all that excited about him. Victor Avellar is still out there. Still supposedly looking for $4.8 million. I'd still bring him back potentially on a one-year deal, but I don't know that I want to be paying him $4.8 million. I think there's still just a lot of options out there. So at this point, I think we just bide our time and see what the market looks like in February. There's not someone who to me stands out so much that we got to really chase after them at this point. And it seems like Victor Serrano likes our offer. Hopefully we'll hear from him. The calendar is now flipped to 2040. We've gotten one of our outfielders so far. We got another potential outfielder in the Rule 5 draft. We signed another minor league outfielder with some potential with the international amateur free agent, Jesus Buenrostro. Our scout is looking for utility outfielders for us right now. Yeah, this guy would definitely help us, but he's making $21 million a year. And I'm guessing Milwaukee's going to be looking for a decent amount for him. Nobody that makes the deal work, but that could be because of the money. Yeah, we're not going to trade you the 24-year-old National League MVP for your guy. We're building this around Isaiah Hill for at least another 2 or 3 years till he hits arbitration eligibility. So we'll see what happens with Serrano. We can also, if we can also add him, not the worst thing in the world, but as I expected, it's been a pretty quiet off season so far. And we've got a deal in place for Tony Espinoza, an outfielder from the Rangers. I don't know if he's really good enough to be our fifth outfielder. He somehow did win a Gold Glove in right field in 2035. He's got a gun out there, so he probably had a bunch of assists that season. But he's been a well below average offensive player over the course of his career. But we can basically get him for just about nothing, just a very middling, not even a middling, a useless prospect in Jonathan Azurdia. So we might as well just take a flyer on him. Go ahead and complete the trade. Maybe Espinoza makes our team, maybe he doesn't, but at least gives us another option to look at in the outfield. And as I mentioned, we're not going to be spending any money on him, so kind of another free option for us in the outfield along with the Rule 5 acquisition, Bobby Barrera. So at this point, we're heading towards the middle of January. We're kind of accomplishing our goals, I guess. Still got about $10 million to spend on free agents. So I am just going to, in the interest of Making sure I don't forget. I'm going to bump those scouting and development budgets up a little bit more just in case I get going crazy in our next sim and we get close to spring training. You can see that with just another 4 million, we can get back to where we were last year with both of those, which would be awesome. Kind of depends what we end up doing, whether we sign any additional free agents or not. We've got enough money in the draft budget. Obviously can't really reach for anybody, but if we're picking people who are around slot, we'll be okay on that front. See who's available on the free agent list at this point, particularly among those outfielders before we move on. Victor Avelar still out there. Looks like his demand may have come down a bit. 4.4 million. Just don't know if he's better than the guys we've brought on board. I mean, clearly he's a very different player than Ignacio Carbajal, who's going to be our center fielder. But when we look at Bobby Barrera, the Rule 5 acquisition, he's also not that great defensively. Looks like he might be able to hit a little bit. And then Tony Espinoza, who we just traded for, a little better defensively than either Barrera or Avelar. But he's kind of proven that he's not really all that good a major league hitter, which for a corner outfielder is not optimal. He is a left-handed bat, and we can use another one of those. And he profiles as, closer to being an average-ish type hitter against right-handed pitching, being a left-handed bat. So Espinosa's got a chance to stay on the team. Barrera's got a chance to stay on the team. And I don't feel like we need to chase after Avelar right now. Obviously, that could change in our next episode, and we'll find out then when we dig into spring training, make some final roster moves, getting ready for the 2040 season. But until then, as I kind of outlined at the start, I think it's been a pretty quiet off season for the Pirates. Hopefully we've made the roster a little better on the edges over these last couple months of simulated action. And until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.